Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly into a myth that's somehow both ridiculous and radiant. You find yourself barefoot in an endless meadow, somewhere between a dream and a sunbeam. The grass is the soft kind, no itchy surprises, stretching, across golden hills that shimmer as if someone cranked the saturation way up. The sky is unfairly blue. Birds sing in harmonies so precise it feels like they rehearsed. This, you soon realize, is Apollo's domain. He isn't here yet, but everything smells like sunlight and smugness. Somewhere nearby, a brook chuckles over smooth stones. There's an olive tree leaning just the right amount to make a perfect napping spot. If you listen carefully, you can almost hear a lyre playing itself, 6 strings whispering melodies designed to lull even the crankiest. Gods into serenity, but don't get too cozy yet. Because tonight's story? It's not just about sleepy meadows and celestial music. It's about what happens when the god of reason, order, and blinding perfection gets completely outwitted by a baby. A literal baby. With dimples. You probably won't survive this if you're a proud Olympian with a fragile ego. Just saying. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake enough to type, drop your location and the local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're all tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink, and suddenly you're standing next to a young cow who smells faintly of wild thyme. She's chewing slowly as if to say, "This is my show now." Around you, the rest of the herd swishes their tails lazily, basking in that surreal late-afternoon glow reserved for paintings and half-remembered dreams. These aren't just any cows. They belong to Apollo, god of the sun, healing, archery, poetry, and, well, a very short-lived interest in animal husbandry. He'd been showing them off all week, parading them like prize-winning corgis at an immortal dog show. Glossy hides, symmetrical horns, the works. And now they're missing. You haven't seen Apollo yet, but you can feel the storm brewing behind that golden horizon. Somewhere up on Mount Olympus, a god with perfect cheekbones is about to realize he's been robbed. And not just robbed, mocked. Because this heist? It wasn't carried out by an enemy, a titan, or even a disgruntled satyr. It was orchestrated by a baby. A divine, chaotic, giggling infant born less than 2 days ago, Hermes. He was barely done being swaddled when he crawled out of his cave cradle on Mount Cyllene, tucked under his mortal mother's watchful eye. And like any good trickster deity, he wasted no time. First steps, please. He skipped straight to Grand Theft Bovine. Historians still argue whether Hermes was simply bored or already crafting his divine resume, but either way, he slipped past. The nymphs found Apollo's precious cattle and decided they'd look much better anywhere else. But Hermes wasn't just sneaky, he was clever. And that's saying something when your family includes Athena and her tactical spreadsheets. Instead of walking the cows away in a normal, incriminating manner, Hermes did something brilliantly dumb. He made them walk backwards. You look down. There, in the dirt, are hoofprints pointing toward Apollo's pasture, not away from it, as if the cows had politely returned themselves and settled in for the night. It's like a prank, cooked up by a gifted toddler and a professional illusionist. And, if that weren't enough, Hermes wore sandals. Tiny baby sandals with branches attached, scrambling his own footprints to confuse anyone tracking him. Which in a few short hours will include one very grumpy sun god with zero patience for bovine nonsense. You follow the reversed trail as it winds through fields and forests, your feet sinking into soft moss and dusty clay. The cows had wandered, across dry riverbeds and leafy hills, completely under the command of a baby who probably still had a milk tooth. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you try to imagine Apollo's reaction when he realizes his prized herd is missing. Probably. Something like, "How dare the universe?" You can almost hear the divine huff. Modern scholars love pointing out how this entire story shows a tension between order and chaos, Apollo as the symbol of logic, poetry, and celestial predictability, Hermes as the wild-card toddler with a wicked grin and no bedtime. But out here, in this meadow, you're not thinking in metaphors. You're just trying not to laugh. The cows pause occasionally to graze, unconcerned about the divine drama they've ignited. They swish their tails, give you mild side-eye, and keep chewing. And the sun? It dips lower, casting long, sleepy shadows across the ground. You press onward, past a grove of cedar trees and a lazy stream, where one cow takes a break to wade, in up to her knees. She makes eye contact with you like, "Don't judge, it's been a day." You're beginning to suspect the cows are smarter than anyone gives them credit for, or maybe Hermes just gave them a really compelling PowerPoint presentation. A warm breeze rolls in. Somewhere nearby, a nightingale practices scales. The trail is slowing now, hinting that the baby bandit and his ruminant accomplices are settling in for a break, or more likely inventing something entirely new with whatever happens to be lying around. Spoiler, it's a tortoise, but we'll get there. For now, just let the strangeness settle over you. You're walking backward into myth, following hoof prints that make no sense, through a world painted in honey and sleep. And the best part? You're only just getting started. The hoof prints end where the landscape changes, less pasture, more pebbly slope. The kind of terrain cows do not voluntarily cross unless heavily bribed or tricked by someone with an unreasonably cute smile and a divine birth certificate. You pause, glancing around. No baby in sight. But the ground here has that look, disturbed in a way that says, "Some mischief happened recently. A few scattered cow pies confirm it." You hear something? A faint hiccup? No, a giggle, high-pitched, and distinctly pleased with itself. You follow it, stepping lightly around a boulder covered in lazy lichen. And there, nestled in the shade of a scrubby olive tree, sits the most absurd sight you've seen all day, which is really saying something. Hermes, barely knee-high, wearing a little scrap of cloth, some comically oversized sandals, and an expression that says, "What, me?" His curls are tousled, his cheeks are round, and his entire aura radiates the smug calm of someone who knows they've done something very, very funny. The cows. Oh, they're nearby, just lounging, chewing cud like it's happy hour. They seem unusually chill for a herd that's just committed grand theft divine property. Hermes waves at you. His fingers are sticky with fig juice. There's a tortoise, shell sitting next to him, hollowed out, with a few strings strung across it like a tiny harp prototype. He plucks one and looks delighted when it sings. You stare. He beams. This, apparently, is how a god spends his second day of life. Now, most modern people would reasonably assume a newborn god might be tired from, say, developing cognitive function or learning to stand. But Hermes is no ordinary infant. According to the ancient Homeric hymns, he was born fully aware and immediately bored, and boredom, for a trickster, is a dangerous thing. Historians still argue whether this version of Hermes, precocious baby inventor, is meant to be literal or just a poetic device. Was he really crafting musical instruments before he could crawl? Or is this all metaphor for the sudden spark of innovation, the birth of creativity itself? Frankly, you don't care, because this baby just outwitted Apollo, and now he's building a lyre out of what used to be a tortoise. Ah, yes, the tortoise. You glance at the empty shell. It still has legs. Hermes, sensing your concern, pats it gently and whispers something you can't quite hear, possibly an apology, possibly a haiku. Either way, the tortoise doesn't seem mad. Probably under some sort of adorable spell. Ancient sources are weirdly specific about this. Hermes found the tortoise, admired its shape, and decided it would make the perfect resonating chamber for his new musical instrument. Never mind that he'd never seen a lyre before, he just invented it. Strings from sheep gut, frame from reeds and sticks, and boom, first lyre in existence, born from equal parts genius and baby mischief. You watch as Hermes plucks at the strings again. The sound is faint, twinkly, oddly calming. One of the cows lets out a sigh, or a belch. Could go either way. But here's the thing. Hermes isn't just messing around anymore. Now that the cows are corralled and the lyre is singing, he's fully in performer mode. He strums a gentle rhythm, starts humming, an ancient tune that somehow includes references to both river frogs and lightning bolts. And you get the distinct impression he's making fun of Apollo. Through interpretive song. You sit down next to a rock, mostly for emotional support. The baby musician is really good. Eventually, Hermes yawns, then lies down next to his new toy, curls up like a sleepy cat, and immediately falls asleep. His little fists unclench, his face softens. For the briefest moment, he looks like an actual infant. But the cows? They remain on high alert. They know something's coming. And it's wearing a laurel crown, because elsewhere, in some sun-drenched corner of the world, Apollo has discovered the theft, and he is not amused. You can imagine it now. Apollo striding into his pasture, expecting the familiar sound of contented mooing and soft grass munching. Instead, silence. One suspicious cow standing alone, chewing conspicuously and avoiding eye contact. The sun god's jaw tightens, his eyes narrow. Somewhere behind him, a lyre hits a sour note, and just like that, he's off, tracking down the culprit with the fury of someone who never gets pranked and absolutely refuses to be the punchline. Apollo has always represented order, harmony, medicine, logic, prophecy. He's the guy who color-codes his scrolls and alphabetizes his ambrosia. He does not do well with surprises, especially ones involving missing livestock and inverted hoof prints. And yet, here we are. The herd is no longer where it should be. The trail makes no sense. And every step forward is actually backward. It's like trying to solve a maze drawn by a caffeinated toddler on a sugar rush. Which, to be fair, is exactly what happened. You stand slowly, glancing at the sleeping godlet. His tiny chest rises and falls. One of the cows nuzzles him gently, then settles in beside him like an enormous horned babysitter. There's something strangely touching about the whole scene. The mischief, the invention, the nap. As if the world paused just long enough to let one divine prank play out perfectly. And somewhere in the distance, closer now, you hear the unmistakable rhythm of angry footfalls. Apollo is coming. His sandals are loud. His mood is worse. You'd better get ready. Things are about to escalate, but not too fast. After all, this is bedtime history. Even divine vengeance can take its sweet, sleepy time. When Apollo storms into a scene, he doesn't just arrive, he descends, like golden thunderclouds with cheekbones. The light shifts before you see him, going from lazy afternoon glow to something more polished, more deliberate. It's like the sun itself suddenly remembers it has office hours. The birds stop chirping. Even the cows lift their heads, chewing, slowing, as if mentally preparing for the level of drama that only a deeply offended Olympian can bring. You hear him before you see him. Footsteps? Yes. But also the unmistakable sound of irritated harp tuning. A string twangs, followed by an exasperated sigh. And then, finally, Apollo steps into view. He looks immaculate, of course, not a curl out of place. White tunic crisp, laurel wreath firmly intact. But his expression? Pure rage, delicately iced with disbelief. He scans the scene. Sleeping baby. Content cows. A suspiciously empty tortoise shell. Then he points dramatically at the infant. You! Hermes doesn't move. Apollo steps closer, voice rising like a choir on fire. "Don't pretend to be asleep, I know it was you." You glance down. Hermes's eyelids flutter. He shifts slightly, burrows deeper into a pile of cow fur, and lets out the softest snore you've ever heard. If this is an act, it's award-worthy. Apollo is not charmed. Now here's where things get tricky, because you, dear listener, might think this is where Apollo scoops up his cows, gives Hermes a lecture on divine ethics, and restores order. But this is Greek mythology. Nothing is ever resolved in a straightforward way, especially when baby gods are involved. So instead of solving the problem, Apollo does what any self-respecting older sibling would do. He tattles. Historians still argue whether this moment was meant as comedy, criticism, or just mythic realism. But what we do know is that Apollo picks up the sleeping Hermes like a particularly infuriating puppy, hoists him under one arm, and marches straight back to Mount Olympus. You follow, obviously. The cows? They stay behind. They've done their part. Time to graze and process trauma. The climb is long, steep, and weirdly quiet. Apollo mutters to himself the entire way. 2 days old. 2. His tone suggests this fact personally offends him. And already a menace. Hermes drools on his arm. You finally crest the edge of Olympus. And oh, it's glorious. Marble columns wrapped in lazy vines. Pavilions dripping with grape leaves. An eternal golden hour that flatters literally everyone. Gods lounge on chaise, lounges sipping nectar and probably judging mortals from a distance until they see Apollo and the baby. And suddenly, it's popcorn time. Because while Apollo is the god of many refined things, subtlety is not one of them. He stomps across the divine courtyard, straight to Zeus's throne, and deposits Hermes like a suspiciously cute evidence bag. "Father," he says, chest heaving, "your son has stolen my cows." Zeus, to his credit, doesn't laugh. Out loud. Hermes blinks up at him, blinks again, and gives the single most innocent smile the world has ever seen. You half expect a halo to appear. Instead, he hiccups. Zeus strokes his beard, a move that suggests equal parts amusement and "oh boy, here we go again." "Son," he says mildly, "did you steal your brother's cows?" Hermes sits up slowly, yawns, and then, still with fig juice, on his cheeks, delivers the first known baby legal defense in recorded mythology. "No," he says, stretching the vowel like molasses. "I just borrowed them. They were bored. I took them for a walk." A pause. Zeus raises an eyebrow. Apollo sputters. Hermes continues, now warming to the role. "They were tired of standing around mooing all day. I gave them some culture, music, a little fresh air." He plucks the lyre, which should be incriminating, considering it's made from materials taken during the cow heist interlude. But somehow, it's disarming. The melody is gentle, flowing, kind of catchy. Even Zeus tilts, his head impressed. Now here's where it gets even more absurd. Instead of punishing Hermes, Zeus chuckles. Because of course he does. This is the god who turned into a swan for romance. He has a soft spot for chaos wrapped in charm. And so he says, "Make peace with your brother." Hermes nods solemnly, then offers Apollo the lyre. Apollo stares at it, then at Hermes, then back at the lyre. You can see the calculations happening. Petty rage versus musical innovation. He takes the lyre. Hermes beams. This is the moment history books gloss over with terms like reconciliation or symbolic gift exchange. But you're watching it happen in real time, the beginning of Apollo's career as the god of music. All because a baby stole his cows, built an instrument out of a tortoise, and sweet-talked his way out of divine punishment. Cows, still unaccounted for. Justice, wildly inconsistent. Music, forever changed. As Apollo turns the lyre over in his hands, you can see the tension drain from his shoulders. The notes he plucks are cleaner now, more deliberate. A god learning his new voice. Hermes leans back on his elbows, smug beyond reason. Zeus watches, amused, and mutters something like, "Just wait till he invents money." And just like that, the incident is resolved. Not with thunderbolts or curses, but with a jam session. You're left standing in the middle of Olympus, wondering how this entire feud was diffused by vibes. The lesson here? Sometimes chaos wins, and sometimes it's adorable. The cows return several hours later, unguided, unbothered, and vaguely smug. No one knows exactly how they found their way back. Some say Hermes whispered directions into the wind. Others believe cows just have excellent internal GPS and an intense love of routine. Either way, they arrive back at Apollo's pasture looking well-fed and oddly cultured, like they've been to a really nice spa that also offered harp lessons. Apollo, now officially over the whole thing, or at least pretending to be, gives them a cursory head count and a mild scowl. No permanent damage, no strange markings. One of them has a flower tucked behind its ear. He lets it go. Meanwhile, Hermes is back in his cave, sitting on a rock that looks suspiciously throne-like for a newborn. He's humming again, this time a new tune. Something with a bouncier rhythm, more tricks up its sleeve. A melody with secrets. You sit nearby, knowing full well you're in the presence of a very tiny, very powerful force of nature. Here's the thing. Hermes may have invented the lyre and charmed his way out of divine punishment, but he's not stopping there. Not even close. You can practically see the wheels turning in his oversized baby head. Historians still argue whether this period, post-cow heist, pre-official godhood, marks the beginning of Hermes as a patron of everything slippery. Thieves, merchants, travelers, interpreters, diplomats, anyone who needs to think fast, move faster, and talk their way out of trouble, and you, sitting in that cave, begin to see the pattern. Hermes doesn't just solve problems. He rearranges them into opportunities. Even when he's the cause of the problem to begin with. Take, for instance, the sandals. He's fiddling with them now. Not just any sandals. These are his custom design. Winged, of course. Tiny feathers tied delicately to each strap. It's unclear whether they actually help him fly or if they're just for flair, but the effect is the same. Speed, flash, freedom. As he straps them on, he glances at you and grins. You want to see something cool? You hesitate, because the last time you heard that question from a god, it ended with a bronze bull and 6 weeks of sunburn. But Hermes doesn't wait for your answer. He's already sprinting, if you can call that blur a sprint, out of the cave, up a ridge, and into the sky. Yes, into the sky. Turns out the wings work. You follow at a mortal pace, heart pounding, lungs wheezing, until you reach the ridge just in time to see him arc across the horizon, leaving a faint trail of sparkle behind. Like a comet with a mischievous agenda, when he lands, it's with a puff of dust and a bow like he's been doing this for centuries. Pretty good for day 3, huh? You nod, speechless, and maybe a little winded. Hermes stretches, then flops, back onto the grass, arms behind his head. He seems content. But you can tell it won't last. He's not the kind of deity who enjoys stillness for long. And you're right. Because as you watch the clouds drift lazily overhead, Hermes starts, muttering ideas, things he wants to try, places he wants to go, tricks he wants to pull. There's talk of tunnels beneath the underworld, secret trade routes through desert cities, even a language made entirely of bird whistles. It's not clear if he's joking. Probably not. And somehow, amid all the plotting, he starts doodling in the dirt. Symbols, swirls, something that vaguely resembles a contract. Thinking of starting a business, he says casually. Courier service, fastest in the cosmos. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. I've got the sandals. Might as well monetize. It's a joke, but not really. Because this, dear listener, is how gods evolve, not just through worship or myth, but through constant reinvention. Hermes isn't content to be the baby who stole cows. He's building an empire of movement, of ideas, messages, transactions. Every whispered deal, every secret note passed under a table, every midnight journey across enemy lines. They'll all have his fingerprints on them. And it all started here, with stolen cows and a hollowed-out tortoise. The sun starts to dip, behind the hills, casting long shadows over the cave entrance. Hermes grows quieter. Not tired exactly, but thoughtful. You get the sense he's replaying the day, cataloging the highlights, mentally filing away every smirk, every loophole, every time he almost got caught but didn't. That's the Hermes way. You lie back beside him. The grass is cool now. The breeze carries the scent of figs, dust, and the faintest echo of harp strings. Somewhere, a cow moos philosophically, and you realize you're not just witnessing a story, you're inside the moment that reshaped Olympus. The next morning, Hermes decides to become a herdsman. He announces this without fanfare, while chewing on a reed and squinting at a suspiciously organized clump of clouds. You're mid-fig bite when he says it and nearly choke. Wait. What? He shrugs, like it's the most reasonable decision in the world. Gotta learn the job if I'm gonna run the racket. And that's how you find yourself helping a divine toddler try to wrangle livestock. The scene unfolds on a quiet slope above, the cave. The cows are there, Apollo's cows, yes, the very same ones, and they do not look thrilled. You can sense the tension in the air, like they remember everything, the reversed hooves, the stolen evening, the suspicious lyre sounds at midnight, and now the perpetrator has shown up again, this time wearing a homemade toga and a tiny straw hat. It's a look. Hermes plants a stick in the ground dramatically. This is my staff. Every real herdsman has one. You nod, deciding not to mention that his staff is a hollow fennel stalk. He then attempts to name the cows. This goes poorly. 1. He calls Smudge, which makes some sense. It has a dark patch on its face. Another is dubbed Greg, which feels modern and unsettling. The largest is simply named Moo Moo Supreme, and honestly, she seems flattered. Hermes claps his hands. All right, herd, let's graze with intention. Nothing happens. In fact, Smudge turns around and walks directly into a tree. It's unclear whether this is rebellion, confusion, or just bovine ennui. Hermes sighs heavily, like a teacher in charge of the world's least motivated field trip. And this, dear listener, is where the god of travelers, thieves, and speed meets his first real nemesis, boredom. Because as it turns out, herding cows is incredibly slow. There's no heist, no harp solos, no angry siblings stomping down the trail, just chewing, occasional mooing, a deeply unsettling amount of staring. You spend an hour trying to prevent Moo Moo Supreme from eating a sandal. Hermes tries playing the lyre to liven things up, but the cows remain unmoved. Literally, they do not move. Eventually, Hermes collapses onto a rock, defeated. Okay, he mutters. I get it now. This job is horrifying. You smirk. Respect for Apollo? Not quite, he says, shielding his eyes from the sun. But I do pity him now. This is like watching paint undry. You lie back in the grass beside him. The sun is strong, the cows hum in their bovine way, and for a moment things are calm. But then, of course, Hermes sits up again, because stillness isn't in his bones for long. I'm gonna automate this. You blink. You're going to automate cow herding? Yeah, I'll charm a breeze to gently push them toward grass. Or make a flute that tells them where to go. Or, train bees to herd them from above. Historians still argue whether this marks the first recorded attempt at magical automation. Most agree that Hermes didn't follow through with the bee idea, probably for the best. But the concept? Way ahead of its time. Meanwhile, the cows start migrating uphill, unbidden. Hermes notices this too late and gives a half-hearted chase, waving his fennel stick like a conductor who's lost the beat, and so ends his brief, ambitious, utterly doomed career as a herdsman. Back at the cave, he sulks for exactly 3 minutes, before perking up again. All right, that was a bust, but I learned something. You raise an eyebrow. Delegation, he says proudly. Vital. I need assistance, like a snake or two. Something that listens. Something slinky. You're not sure whether he's joking, and then he pulls out the lyre again, because for all his schemes and speed, music is the one thing he always returns to. The strings hum beneath his fingers, as though they know exactly what kind of mood he's in. The melody that spills out is soft this time. Lazy. Looping. It sounds like golden sun on warm rocks and cows grazing at their own pace. It sounds like failure, but also freedom. And maybe that's the whole point. Hermes isn't trying to be perfect. He's trying everything, every identity, every role, every ridiculous idea, just to see what fits. Hurting? Nah. But now he knows. You glance at him, barefoot, fig-stained, bits of cow fluff in his hair, and realize you're watching the divine embodiment of trial and error, and for a god, that's oddly comforting. Later that same afternoon, Hermes declares himself a god of boundaries. You're mid-nap on a warm rock, gently drooling, when he pokes your shoulder with a fennel stalk. Hey, I've decided I control lines now. You crack one eye open. Lines, boundaries, thresholds, the in-betweens. You know, the stuff people step over without thinking about it, but secretly hold the world together. This sounds like classic Hermes. Vague, philosophical, and almost certainly self-serving. Still, you stretch, sit up, and squint into the sun. Why now? He shrugs, in that breezy way he does when he's about to reveal a plan he's definitely been crafting for hours. Well, think about it. Everyone else gets domains. Apollo's got music and sunlight and cow ownership. Ares has war. Athena's got strategy and owls. But no one's picked the cracks, the edges. That space between leaving and arriving. That's mine. You're starting to see it. The trickster baby god who reversed hooves and walked. Backward to confuse pursuit now wants to rule over transitions. Of space, of time, of intent. He grins. I'm thinking crossroads, literal and metaphorical, doorways, borders, trade routes, maybe dreams too, but I'll need to file a request for that. File a request? Zeus has a whole system now. It's bureaucratic. He says this with deep personal offense, like a child who just learned that lightning bolts must be requisitioned via parchment form. Hermes begins drawing lines in the dirt, curved ones, straight ones, a spiral that makes you slightly dizzy. Around each one, he places a small stone. Markers, he says, to show people where they are and where they're about to be. This is where the idea of Herma is born. Those strange little roadside piles of stone that ancient travelers would add to, one pebble at a time. Historians still debate whether Hermes himself created the first one or just wandered by and claimed it retroactively. Either way, they became sacred to him. Small acts of guidance, thresholds you could hold in your hand. You watch as he arranges the stones with careful thought, not just flinging them down, but positioning each one as if it means something. And it does. Crossing a line changes you, he says, gently pressing the last stone into place. Even if it's just from one field to the next. You think about that, how easy it is to miss those little shifts. Leaving your home in the morning and becoming someone else in the marketplace. Walking into a temple and feeling your shoulders drop. Moving from before into after without even realizing it. Hermes sees it all, and he's decided to make it his job. Of course, this isn't just a poetic whim. He's already thinking of uses. If he controls boundaries, he can slip through them faster than thought. Through cracks in walls, under locked doors, across borders where others need papers. He'll be the god who gets where others can't. That night, he tests it. You're both perched near a cliff, watching the sun slip behind Mount Killing when he pulls a line in the dirt with his finger. That's Olympus, he says, pointing. Beyond the line. And this, he taps the ground on your side, is the rest of us. You smirk. You're not allowed up there yet. He winks. Exactly. Then he steps across the line. Nothing explodes. No lightning bolt descends from the clouds. But something shifts in the air, like the hush right before a story begins. He looks taller on the other side. Or maybe that's just the light. See, he says. Lines are suggestions. He steps back and gives you a fig. Keep that in your pocket. You'll need it when you cross your next one. Later, as you lie back under the stars, fig half-eaten, you realize Hermes isn't trying to own anything. He's trying to be present wherever the action is, not fixed to a palace or throne, but woven into the pathways themselves. In every hinge that squeaks, in every trail fork that forces a choice, in every pause before someone says, yes. You can almost hear him in the wind whispering, go on, take the step. By the next morning, Hermes has decided he needs proper accessories. You're sipping something vaguely fig-flavored and trying to convince a goat not to chew your sandal when he appears from the cave wearing an ensemble that can only be described as confidently homemade. Atop his head, a wide-brimmed traveler's hat, absurdly large and flopping at the edges. Perched on the sides, two tiny golden wings, glued on with what appears to be honey and ambition. On his feet, sandals, worn, yes, but now lovingly modified with little feathered wings stitched to the straps. They flap dramatically every time he takes a step, even though they're clearly not aerodynamic. You blink at him. Flight? You ask. Eventually, he grins. Right now, it's just for flair. He spins, one sandal catching the light. Presentation is part of the trick, my friend. If I look like I know where I'm going, people will assume I'm already there. And honestly, it works. He looks like a god with a mission. A very small, under-supervised god with a flair for costume design, but still, there's something electric in his confidence. The hat, he explains, is a petassos, a traditional traveler's cap. Very popular with mortals. Says, I'm practical but stylish. The winged sandals, though, those are his. Hermes says he dreamed them up after watching a bee zigzag through a sunbeam. Speed is only impressive if it's graceful. Otherwise, it's just crashing fast. Historians still argue whether the winged sandals were symbolic or somehow functionally magical. Some sources say they let him fly. Others claim they were just early branding genius. Either way, the image stuck. Hermes without his sandals is like a bard without a lute. Possible, but sad. You follow him as he parades through the grove, greeting everything in sight. A rock? Good day, solid citizen. A lizard. Keep scuttling, you glorious creature of the sun. A slightly confused old shepherd. My compliments on your beard, sir. Very thunder god chic. It's a bit much, but also charming. At one point, he stops in front of a puddle and studies his reflection. The wings on his hat tilt as he bends down. I think I'm becoming me, he murmurs. Not just the son of Zeus, or that weird baby who stole cows, but Hermes. You know, you do. It's that moment, when someone figures out their style. Not just the clothes, but the posture, the selfhood. Hermes is assembling himself piece by piece, accessory by accessory, decision by ridiculous decision. And of course, this leads directly into the next big idea. All right, he says, I've got the outfit, the vibe, the portfolio, but now I need visibility. You stare at him. What? Publicity, he explains. I need to show up in people's dreams, leave my mark, whisper things, inspire journeys, steal a few story slots from the big guys. He paces. I need to be in myths, but you are a myth, you point out. Sure, he says, but I want to be the kind of myth where people put a little statue of me by the road and say, Hermes, guide my feet, before setting off. It's hard to argue with the ambition. So, he sets to work creating his own shrines. Tiny ones made of stacked stones and fig seeds and scraps of metal he insists are sacred. He places them at trail crossings, hill crests, places where people pause and ask, which way? You. Help, of course. It's oddly soothing, balancing pebbles, adding a sprig of rosemary here, a twist of twine there. Hermes hums as he works. Sometimes it's a tune from the lyre, sometimes something new, just for the moment. At one point he says, this one's for messengers, people who carry bad news kindly. At another, this one's for the first kid in a family to leave home. And, finally, this one's for people who get lost on purpose, because staying still felt worse. You realize he isn't just making shrines. He's creating permissions for people to move, to change, to leave. And for a god of transitions, that's the most sacred work of all. By sunset, the hillside is dotted with tiny, hopeful cairns. Birds flit between them. A breeze picks up, as if something ancient has noticed the gesture and approves. Hermes watches the sky. Do you think, he asks softly, that someday people will trust me? You glance at his feathered sandals, his crooked grin, the way he's both completely chaotic and deeply sincere. I think they'll come to need you. He nods, satisfied. And just like that, the hat tilts forward again, the sandals flap, and he's off, walking like a god who's already in 5 places at once. That night, Hermes starts teaching you how to move like a messenger. You're not entirely sure what that means at first. You figure it might involve walking briskly, carrying a scroll, maybe not tripping over roots. But Hermes has other ideas. 2. Be a proper herald, he says, tying a wildflower behind his ear for no discernible reason. You don't just deliver news, you wear it. You are it. You become the transition. You nod slowly, unsure whether this is going to end with philosophy or light cardio. He drags you out to the edge of a moonlit field and starts demonstrating. Not walking exactly, more like a dance. Swift, smooth steps, sudden stops, pauses that make you lean in, then sharp turns that leave you blinking. People need to watch you, he says. They need to feel the message arriving before you even speak. You are the whisper on the wind, the shadow in the torchlight, the goosebump right before the storm. You do your best imitation, which mostly looks like trying not to sprain your ankle in the dark. Still, he claps. Not bad. Bit heavy on the knees, but you're capturing the urgency. The key is to be fast without looking rushed. According to Hermes, messengers are sacred, not just errand runners, but truth bringers. Their job is to carry meaning across distance, across doubt, across danger. Even in war, he tells you, pausing mid-twirl, there's a rule. You don't hurt the messenger. Historians still debate how well that rule was followed, but it existed. In Greek tradition, heralds were considered inviolable. Hermes made sure of that. Imagine, he says, balancing on a stone, you've just been told your brother's army is marching against you, but the person telling you, he's not your enemy. He's just the river the news swims in. You can hate the water, but the water doesn't stop flowing. You stare at him. So, you're the water? I'm everything. The footstep, the pause, the gasp, the scroll and the silence after it, the moment right before someone decides what to do next. It's a little dramatic, sure, but he's not wrong. In myth, Hermes becomes the guide of information. Between gods and mortals, between one kingdom and another, even between the living and the dead. He's allowed into places others aren't, because everyone, eventually, needs news. He spends part of the evening teaching you announcement posture, which apparently involves standing as if you know the secret and aren't quite sure the listener can handle it. Lean slightly forward, hands loose, voice calm, like you're about to say, "It is time." You do it. You look like you're about to ask for a refund. You try again. Now you look like you're hiding bread under your tunic. By the fifth attempt, he gives up and decides you have a future more in quiet companion than divine herald, which honestly suits you just fine. Later, over a shared fig and some wild goat cheese, Hermes starts listing all the things he wants to be the messenger of. Not just war declarations. That's boring. I want to bring news of births and dreams and people changing their names. I want to whisper into the ears of travelers who don't know where they're going yet. You raise an eyebrow. And what exactly would you whisper? He thinks for a long moment. Then, in a voice like the wind sneaking under a door, "Keep going. You're almost there." You feel that one, deep in the chest. It's then that he announces his next big addition to the outfit, a staff. "Every god needs a cool object," he says. Zeus has the thunderbolt, Poseidon has the trident, Hera has dignity. I need something that says, "I travel constantly but with purpose." He rummages through the cave until he finds a stick. It's crooked. It has bark in odd places. It's maybe a little cursed. "This," he declares, holding it aloft like it's a sacred relic, "is my caduceus." You squint. Looks like a stick. It will be a caduceus. Eventually. Once I wrap some ribbons around it. Maybe some snakes. Snakes? Symbolic. Runs two of them, intertwined, opposing forces in harmony. Or possibly just because people like snakes. I haven't decided. Historians naturally still debate the origin of the caduceus, whether it began as a snake-charming tool, a shepherd's rod, or simply Hermes's way of turning a walking stick into a brand logo. But one thing's clear. It becomes his. You watch him test it, tapping stones, twirling it, using it to poke at clouds. This, he says, is the line between here and next. And then he does that Hermes thing again, where he walks forward, and you're no longer sure he's moving through space or just changing reality slightly with each step. The grass bends differently under his feet. The night air leans in, Yilao. Sit back, chew another fig, and think maybe, just maybe, he is becoming the god he says he is. Morning light filters softly through olive branches as you wake to Hermes preparing for his latest venture. He's decided it's time to become the patron of travelers. You watch as he polishes his winged sandals, the little feathers catching. The sun like tiny flames flickering in a gentle breeze. People move a lot, he explains, balancing on one foot, but they don't always know where they're going. I want to help them find their way. You nod, thinking about your own journeys and all the moments you wished someone was quietly guiding your steps, especially the times you took a wrong turn and ended up in a muddy field instead of a festival. Hermes straps on his sandals with exaggerated care. I'll be the god who whispers directions, who marks the safe paths, who listens to travelers' stories and keeps them safe. He pulls out a small pouch filled with tiny pebbles. These, he says, are going to be my first trail markers. Little reminders that someone's been here before, that the road is passable. He scatters a few along a dusty path winding through the trees. It's not much, but it's a start. You remember those cairns from the hillside? Small piles of stone pilgrims left behind to mark their journeys. Now it makes sense. Hermes isn't just about swift footsteps and messages. He's about the slow, steady pulse of travel itself. You? No, he muses. Historians still argue whether the winged sandals were originally magic or just a clever symbol of speed. But I like to think it's both. You grin. Dual purpose. Very Hermes. He chuckles, then leans closer, as if sharing a secret. Also, it's rumored I invented the first system of roads and waypoints. Not officially credited, of course. Zeus prefers the credit for highways. But everyone knows who really keeps travelers safe. You raise an eyebrow. Is that true? Hermes shrugs with a twinkle in his eye. Maybe. Maybe not. Historians still debate it. He stands tall, looking out over the landscape as a cool breeze carries scents of time and earth. Travel is more than moving from place to place, he says softly. It's a journey of the soul, a passage through change. You feel yourself relaxing into the moment, imagining the countless travelers who might have whispered prayers to this sprightly god, asking for steady feet and clear skies. Hermes turns to you, his eyes sparkling with mischief and warmth. Ready to hit the road? You smile and nod. Together you set off down the winding path, footsteps light but steady, guided by the god of boundaries, messages, and journeys, Hermes, who once tried herding cows but discovered he was better suited to the open road. The sun climbs higher. Hermes introduces you to his newest fascination, trickery and cleverness. You probably thought this was all about swift sandals and serious messages. But no. Hermes is also the original prankster, the god of wit and playful mischief. He grins as he tells you about his very first heist, stealing his brother Apollo's sacred cows right after he was born. You see, he says, leaning in conspiratorially, babies aren't usually known for cow-herding skills, but I figured why not. He describes how he carefully led the cows backward to confuse the trail, because if you're going to steal cows, you might as well do it with style. You try to imagine a newborn divine baby in diapers, herding cows like a tiny cowboy, and the image cracks a smile from you despite the drowsiness. Historians still argue whether this story symbolizes something deeper about cunning and identity, or if it was just a humorous origin tale told to make people laugh. Hermes chuckles and adds, "It's important to be clever, you know, especially when you're a god trying to carve out a niche." He demonstrates a few classic tricks, like hiding your sandal behind a rock or slipping a slipper off just at the right moment to create confusion. Pranks aren't about being mean, he explains. They're about shaking things up, reminding people not to take life too seriously. He points out that this playful nature is what makes him approachable. Mortals might be scared of Zeus's lightning bolts or Poseidon's storms, but Hermes, he's the one who sneaks you extra olives at a feast or leaves a lucky coin in your pocket. You listen as he recounts tales of him guiding lost souls to the underworld and outwitting gods and giants alike with nothing but a grin and a clever idea. And here's the kicker, Hermes says with a wink. Sometimes the best way to get where you're going is to break the rules, just a little. You nod, feeling the weight of that idea settle softly in your mind. For all his speed and wings, Hermes reminds you that a bit of wit and a dash of humor can be just as powerful as any staff or sandal. He twirls his caduceus, which gleams faintly, in the afternoon sun and says, "Now how about a prank or two before the evening?" You laugh, the tiredness ebbing away just a little, as you prepare to follow the god who turned trickery into art. As dusk settles, Hermes introduces you to another surprising part of his portfolio, dreams and sleep. You might not expect the fast-footed messenger god to care much about rest, but Hermes is all about transitions between worlds, states, and even consciousness. He tells you about his role as psychopomp, a guide for souls crossing from life into the afterlife. But guiding the dead, he says softly, isn't so different from guiding dreams. Both require gentle hands and quiet footsteps. You listen as he describes how he slips into the dreams of mortals, planting ideas, whispering hints, nudging sleepers toward new paths or peace. Historians still debate how much of this was part of early Greek worship or later poetic invention, but the imagery is vivid. Hermes, wings fluttering silently, carrying messages through the fragile veil between waking and sleeping. He pulls from his pouch a small, smooth stone, dark as midnight, and sets it carefully on your palm. This, he says, is a touchstone for dreamwalkers. It reminds you that the border between here and elsewhere is thinner than you think. You hold it and feel a strange calm wash over you. Hermes talks about the ancient practice of incubation, sleeping, in sacred places to receive divine dreams. You know, he muses. Some temples were built just for this. People would come seeking guidance in sleep, hoping for answers from the gods. He smiles. Of course, you might also get some weird dreams about talking animals or missing sandals. That's part of the package. He confesses that he's still figuring out the perfect balance of mischief and comfort when it comes to dreams. You don't want to frighten the dreamer. Just guide them softly, like a breeze through leaves. You close your eyes briefly and imagine Hermes's wings stirring the night air, carrying secrets and solace alike. He tells you stories of dream messages that changed the course of battles, saved cities, and even sparked great inventions. Sleep isn't just rest, he says. It's a doorway, a place where the past, present, and future meet. You think about your own dreams and how strange and wonderful they can be, sometimes confusing, sometimes comforting, often both. Hermes leans back, satisfied. So, when you find yourself drifting tonight, remember there's a God watching over those moments, making sure you arrive safely on the other side. And with that, you feel the soft pull of sleep beginning to weave through your thoughts, gentle, strange, and strangely sweet. As night deepens, Hermes shares with you his connection to language and communication. Beyond just delivering messages, he is the God who inspires the very words themselves. He explains how language was once seen as a kind of magic, a bridge between minds and worlds. You see, he says, before words, there were gestures, grunts, and wild guesses. Then someone decided, let's make this easier. That's where I come in. You imagine early humans gesturing wildly, trying to explain dinner plans without causing a minor war. Hermes describes his role as the inventor of the alphabet, or at least the divine inspiration behind it. Historians still argue whether I truly invented it or if it was more like a team project, but I like to claim credit. It suits me. He chuckles and pulls a piece of parchment inscribed with strange symbols that glow faintly. These symbols, he says, carry power. They hold stories, laws, and even jokes. You lean in, fascinated. Hermes talks about how writing transformed societies, how laws could be recorded and remembered, how stories could be shared across generations, and how trade became possible over long distances. You might say, without language, no civilization. Without me, no gossip. You laugh softly at that. Then he tells you about the Herm, stone pillars with his head, used as boundary markers and signposts in ancient Greece. These, he says, were the original road signs. If you were traveling and saw a Herm, you knew you were on the right path, or that the gods were watching. Historians still debate the exact origin and function of these markers, but their symbolic importance is clear. You realize Hermes's presence was woven into everyday life, from the messages carried by foot and wing to the very words you speak. He says, every time you open your mouth or pen a letter, you're part of a long chain of connection, and I'm there cheering you on. You smile, feeling the weight and wonder of all the silent conversations Hermes has inspired over millennia. The night wraps around you like a warm blanket, filled with unspoken words and gentle reminders of the power of communication. You settle, deeper into the quiet, carrying the god of language with you as the stars blink softly above. As the night stretches on, Hermes shares another facet of his identity, his role as protector of boundaries. You might think boundaries are just lines on maps or fences in fields, but Hermes teaches you they're much more, both physical and spiritual. He explains how he guards the thresholds between worlds, between cities, between moments of life and death. Boundaries, he says, are places of change. They're where something ends and something new begins, and someone has to watch over them. You picture him standing quietly at crossroads, the soft rustle of his cloak blending with the evening breeze. Hermes points to the herms again, explaining how these stone markers were placed at city gates and crossroads, serving both as signs and protective talismans. They remind travelers, respect this space. You're passing from one world into another. He also tells you about ancient customs where travelers would leave offerings at these boundaries, small tokens asking for safe passage. Historians still argue how much these customs influenced later rituals, but their significance is undeniable. Hermes leans closer and whispers, "Crossroads are also places of choice. They're moments when you decide which way to go, who to be." You feel the weight of that thought, how every journey, every change in life is marked by a boundary to cross. He tells a quiet story about a traveler who once stood at a fork in the road, unsure which path to take, and how Hermes appeared, not with loud commands, but a subtle nod toward the less obvious way. "That's the magic of boundaries," Hermes says softly. "They're not just ends, but beginnings." You settle into this idea, the night air cool around you, and the sense of calm purpose it brings. With Hermes as your guide, even the unknown paths seem a little less daunting. The moon is high now, casting silver light on the quiet world as Hermes introduces you to a more unusual part of his legend, his association with flocks and herding, and yes, even cows. Despite his speed and cleverness, Hermes once tried his hand at herding, and it didn't go quite as planned. You can almost picture the scene, a youthful Hermes, full of energy and ambition, tasked with watching over a herd of stubborn cattle. He admits sheepishly, "It turns out, herding is not my forte." You imagine the god chasing after cows, his winged sandals barely keeping up with the slow-moving beasts who have no interest in moving anywhere fast. Historians still debate what this story meant to ancient Greeks. Some say it symbolizes Hermes' youthful mischief and restless spirit. Others think it's an allegory about the difficulty of control versus freedom. Hermes chuckles as he recalls the clever trick he pulled, leading the cattle backward to confuse anyone following the trail. "That was my idea of herding," he says with a grin. "More like a prank than a job." He then explains how this episode connects with his role as a god of boundaries and transitions. Herding is about guiding movement, but also about letting go. You can't force things to move at your pace, Hermes says softly. Sometimes you have to accept their rhythm. You think about your own attempts to control moments that slip through your fingers, the gentle lesson woven into the story. Hermes finishes by telling you that while herding wasn't his calling, it taught him valuable things about patience and timing. And besides, he adds, it's a good story to tell when you want to seem humble. You laugh quietly as the night air deepens and the stars shimmer like distant campfires. The god who once tried herding cows has now shown you the wide range of his roles, from swift messenger to mischievous trickster to thoughtful guide. You feel a soft sense of connection to this playful, complex figure who moves between worlds with wings and wit. As the night gently fades toward dawn, Hermes shares with you a final reflection on his ever-changing journey through myth and meaning. He speaks softly about how, like you, he has navigated many roles: messenger, trickster, guide, protector, and even failed herder. Change is the only constant, he says, his voice barely above a whisper. And learning to move with it, to find grace in transition, that's the real magic. You think about all you've heard tonight, the stories winding seamlessly through time like a quiet stream, each one a glimpse into a world both strange and familiar. Hermes reminds you that myths aren't just ancient tales. They are mirrors reflecting our own struggles, joys, and moments of doubt. He tells you to carry that with you, the playful spark, the gentle guidance, the reminder that even gods stumble, learn, and grow. You feel a deep calm settling over you, the soft night air wrapping around your shoulders like a well-worn cloak. He gives you a knowing smile, one that says, "You're not alone on this journey." And as your eyes grow heavy, you imagine Hermes taking flight once more, wings beating softly against the coming dawn. You close your eyes, the world slipping away, carried gently on his swift wings toward rest and renewal. Word count, 1,000. Wind down now, as your breathing slows and your thoughts soften. Imagine the quiet night stretching out like a gentle ocean around you. Feel the weight of your body sinking into your bed, safe and warm. The stories you've heard tonight, of gods and journeys, of mischief and guidance, fade into a soothing hum, like distant waves on a calm shore. Let your mind drift, light and unburdened, as the soft sounds of the night wrap around. You like a tender lullaby. Know that whatever challenges the day has brought, rest is your refuge. And in this stillness, you are carried gently forward toward dreams filled with wonder and peace. Good night, and may your sleep be deep and kind. End of script. Sweet dreams.